And welcome back. Sorry, a little pause there. Let's consider that injury time as Wi-Fi issues were affecting me here. You can't eradicate technical issues from the script, unfortunately. But we were in the midst of having a fantastic conversation with my two guests this evening, Neil Baker and Jim Cooper. And guys, I know you're at different ends of the spectrum right now in terms of Neil. Obviously, there's an element of waiting around to see when the season theoretically is going to get going. The 2019-20 season is still to be completed according to the National League, whereas Jim, in your league, it's all null and void. Jim, it is very unprecedented. I'm sure in all your managerial experience, you've never come across anything like it. But had you hoped the whole pyramid would make a decision as a unified group?
Yes. Moving forward, I think that would have been the best way to plan for the future. I think that would have been a much fairer way of doing things as well. The actual decision that's been made from step 3 below in relation to no promotion, no relegation, I disagree with. I know that opinions divided on that. An interesting thing, like you mentioned about a difference, Neil's league is yet to finish. I think, as I understand it, they're going to have a vote between themselves as to whether or not they want the season to continue. And I think, and again, that seems a strange way of doing it as well, when every side in the National League get to vote and only there's 4 votes each from the South and the North Division. So again, I can't see how they've come to that decision as well. Stinks a little bit to me. But yeah, it's a strange situation that step 2 and above still don't know what's going to happen, whereas our season's over.
So Neil, can you give us a little bit of an update then? Obviously, a week feels like a very long time in quarantine, and has there been any more communication from the powers that be to you and your colleagues and your board, or are you still kind of a bit of a loss into when you're going to get a definitive decision?
Well, I think obviously they've had their meetings this week, and this is where they've come out with this vote. I think initially it's to vote whether you want to complete the season as of now, or finish the season. But as Jim alluded to, I think there's 32 votes in total. 24 come from the National League Premier, 4 from the National South, and 4 from the National North. I can't get my head around that. Does that mean that we're not worthy of a vote? Surely we're all members of the same league. So I find that absolutely incredible. So in theory, 75% of the vote's going to come from the National Premier, who will make a decision. We'll have to wait and abide by it, because in reality, our vote doesn't really count. On that basis, we would be voting to continue the season. My view, and I've just been talking to Coops, I don't know when the next season's going to start. So from my point of view, it's like, well, why not try and finish one before you worry about the next one? Because there's so many issues, there's so many problems. Obviously, the position we're in, we're obviously going to want to try and complete the season. In my mind, we won't finish the season. I don't think we'll play the last 7 games, but they might decide to do something via points per game. And I've seen that there might then be another vote as to whether or not it might be playoffs, to see who goes up. So we'll see.
So many votes. I don't think we could have ever predicted that our game would either be decided by points per game ratios or votes for clubs. And I guess, again, there is a stark contrast between the position you're both in as well, from the practical point of view of engagement with players, and the minefield that obviously quite a lot of non-league clubs won't have players on contracts. But say there's some players in the step below, Neil, that you think, oh, actually, do you know what? They could bolster my squad a little bit if we are playing these 7 games. Are you allowed to go and sign them? Would someone like Jim be able to keep his squad together? Has that even been spoken about amongst managers?
I think you're opening up a can of worms. We discussed it ourselves last night. It's not something that we'd be able to really go and do, not in a position to do, but I'm sure that there'd be 1 or 2 clubs that could definitely take advantage of something like that and go and sign some players to try and help bolster their end of the season. And that's obviously where there'll have to be something coming from the FA. It's, as we say, it's an absolute minefield. We're uncharted territory, and I just don't really know what the right thing is. In reality, it was probably, I think that they had to do the same thing from step 1 down to step 7. I just don't know how you can decide that step 3's finished and downwards, and yet step 1 and step 2 might still finish, and there's no relegation from step 2. I think if you're a non-league, if it's a non-league pyramid or whatever you want to call it, it's all got to be the same, surely. That's what I can't get my head around.
And we have had quite a lot of people share their opinions, a lot of people involved with football clubs that were on course for promotion in particular, who obviously, even in these times, it's a really devastating blow. And a couple of weeks ago, my personal opinion was, whilst it was unpopular, there was a sense that I admired the FA for taking its stance. Now, obviously, it doesn't govern the Premier League and it doesn't govern the EFL. It can only kind of extend its jurisdiction to the pyramid that it does. Although it was an unpopular decision, Jim, do you think ultimately that blanketed approach is the fairest one? Because what we are seeing now is that some leagues are promoting teams that were in the playoff positions, some are casting a vote, some are doing points per game, and it's that inconsistency which is now, even in these drastic times where we want to come together as a community and get through the crisis, it's actually driving wedges within the football community as a whole, which is quite sad to see.
Yeah, it is. I think whatever decision the powers that be came to was going to divide opinion anyhow. But my own personal opinion would be that there's no relegation from any league this year. However, there should be promotion. And I do think that certainly points per game should be brought in to decide who are the champions and promote them, because we're talking about 7-8 games until the end of the season. And quite rightly, I think then, if it means then that the league above has maybe 3 or 4 extra sides, as it may be the case in some leagues, then they don't then play in a League Cup, or they go into the FA Trophy another round later. There's ways around it, and if you look at some of the sides that you're talking about Barrow, maybe Kings Lynn overtaking York, South Shields, Worthing, Wealdstone, Truro, to name just a few. I think it's unfair that they're not getting their promotion as they probably would have obtained. And I think also that the relegation side of it, I think that would be a fairly good way of evening things out a little bit.
And this week, again, although there is no football on our screens, unfortunately, the FA Council did ratify the decision to null and void the season. And Neil, did you expect any less? Did you think that the FA Council was going to do anything other than agree with the decision? Again, we're learning a lot about governance, aren't we, and governance structures across football, and it's all a little bit baffling to those of us outside its jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that. I've sort of gone two ways really, because when they came out with the decision, I thought that people might just accept it. Obviously, be unhappy about it, but that they would accept it. But then, obviously, the legal letter went out, and all the clubs signing it. I thought that might put a little bit of pressure on the FA to sort of review it again. But obviously, they've gone with that decision. In reality, I think personally, the FA, there needs to be changes within the FA. I think that there needs to be new blood and whatever else, because I don't think that necessarily the clubs are really ever, I don't know, not looked after. But I think that there's so many things that that there's other people that might come up with fresh ideas and new ideas to help the non-league game in particular. So, but yeah, I sort of guessed that they would probably stick with their original decision.
And what has been really interesting is someone's reached out to us on Twitter Stifford Blue, thank you for sharing this with us. So he wants us to discuss the FA's decision to already ask for FA Cup and FA Youth Cup fees for the 2020-21 season. Now, obviously, I'm not sure whether this is true or not, but obviously there has been some correspondence here to suggest that. Jim, really and truly, if that is the case, that is just completely inappropriate right now, surely.
Yes, certainly the fees, for sure. I think that the planning of these competitions needs to go ahead, and they should accept applications to enter that competition next year, but without insisting that payment for this is taken now, because who knows which football club is still going to be in business at that time, and whenever it's going to start, etc. Sadly, there's going to be some clubs that's probably going to fall by the wayside here because of financial constraints and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's pretty harsh from the FA to demand their fees up front.
Yeah, so thank you for that tweet, and thank you to everyone. I'm just going through the feed now that's been interacting with the show this evening and throughout the week. Do let us know what your opinions are, what your comments are, as we kind of go through a whole range of different topics affecting the non-league and grassroots game this evening. The show is very much led and directed by you guys, so please do get in touch. We would love to share your comments on here as well. And talking about the power of social media as a platform for sharing opinions and ideas, Neil, I saw one of your tweets pretty much went viral this week. It was a really interesting one where you put forward quite an innovative solution, because I know that last week we were talking about this is a horrible crisis, but it's making lots of us pause and it's making lots of us reflect, and perhaps football can take the opportunity to do so and reassess how it's structured, how it operates. Talk us through your approach and your idea, because I personally think it's a fantastic one, and I know that it created a huge dialogue, and even Jeff Stelling was chipping in. So do tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say I'm sure it will never happen. But obviously, the situation we find ourselves in with obviously step 3 null and void and below, the issues with costs, travelling, from a point of view of where the National League is and where League 2 is these days, I think that there's very little between the two leagues. You only have to look at the teams that go up from the National League. They often go and do well in League 2, and vice versa. Teams that that get relegated from League 2 don't always come back at the first attempt. So I think the two leagues are very, very similar. And from my point of view, this could actually solve a lot of problems, because you move everyone up to League 2 from the National League, you split it north and south, reduces costs for the northern teams, southern teams. You've got no overnighters, everything that probably costs those League 2 and National League sides money. Plus you get the advantage of, probably bigger visiting crowds, more local derbies, and such like. And what it then also does is it eliminates step 1 effectively from non-league football, and it moves everyone up a level. So all these people that are, going for their legal challenges versus, because they haven't been promoted, well, they actually get moved up a step. And they're one step closer to that Football League dream, effectively. So it could probably solve a lot of problems. It will never happen because I don't think the League 2 sides would agree to, the split of the TV money, and that's probably what it boils down to. But I think personally it could be a good idea. I don't know why we've got five levels of football, which is national. I think League 2 and the National League could be, as I say, amalgamated and regionalised.
It's really interesting to me, and so my background is in marketing. So for me, I think this would be a really good move from a marketing point of view for the point you make about generating crowds, better engagement. And one of the things that working in non-league more recently has opened my eyes to is I just took that all for granted, that it was kind of a more localised form, but actually being involved with Margate and the sheer volume of travelling, like ridiculous mileage on a Tuesday evening, and then in contrast seeing when the big Kent derbies did come around, what a driving force it was, not only in terms of revenue, but in terms of the quality of the atmosphere, the environment, but the knock-on effects as well for player pathways within football clubs, because if there's a good footballing structure across a county, then that is really good for the game as well, as opposed to, trying to get supporters to travel one end of the country and so on. Jim, what's your opinion? Do you think that would be a good solution? And if we're going to go for it, if we're going to try and be innovative and look after the teams that are struggling right now, that could be quite a persuasive way of us all sticking together and coming out the other side potentially in a better shape.
Yeah, it's an excellent idea. Surprisingly, it comes from you, Bakes. However, as Bates alluded to, it's a good idea that's never probably going to be taken up, sadly, because it is a good idea, and it will upset certain people in the Football League. I tried to touch on it a little bit earlier in relation to some decisions that have come from the FA in relation to the league. For me, you've got to question what is actually driving those decisions. Is it a financial thing? Is it something else in the background? I don't know. But the idea for me on paper, it seems such a good idea to regionalise football, to get bigger crowds, to get more local derbies, to prevent teams from, as you said, Charlotte, driving on a Tuesday night. And also, more importantly, fans travelling long distances on a Tuesday night as well to watch a game and support their side. It's a very, very good idea, and I think that you've actually got quite a lot of good support on Twitter, Bakes, one or two dissenters, but again, like I say, you're not going to please everyone all the time.
I think I understand the reasons why people wouldn't like it. A lot of the time it tends to be from those young fans that love those long trips on a Saturday where they can get on the train, have a few beers, and I totally get that. I love that as a player when I was playing in the conference. I love the travelling, but in the current climate we're in, financially there's going to be a lot of issues after this finishes, and just thought it could be a good reason. Another reason why it won't happen is, unfortunately, the EFL won't relent on 3G pitches, and now is an absolute perfect opportunity for the EFL to turn around and say, you know what, we need sustainable clubs, we need sustainable ideas, and 3G is an option for those League Two sides. How they're not allowing that still is beyond me. Obviously we play on a 3G pitch. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic surface, and so for me, now is also a time for them to relent on that, to allow 3G into the Football League to try and help stabilise it. Because if you looked at the balance sheets of most League Two sides and most National League sides, I'm pretty sure most of them will be in deficit.
That's a really interesting point, Neil, and I think you might have targeted early on a new pressure that the National League and EFL in particular are going to find now, because it's going to be, in whatever shape or form the 2020-21 season takes, it's going to be a difficult one. It's going to be a challenging one. And I've spoken to a couple of chairmen this week who their main priority now is keeping their club afloat. So things like the play-in budgets are going to be cold, and clubs will be searching for ways to stay sustainable. And as we have seen, it has been a real topic. Gosh, I miss the days of debating VAR rather than COVID-19. But the 3G topic was a really hot one, and it does offer clubs an opportunity to be run in a more business-like manner. Jim, do you think that's something that might be reconsidered to help football clubs recover from this and to begin to not even produce profit, but to just create better cash flow and revenue? Because another thing that I imagine after this crisis, there's going to be a real sense of what does your football club do for its community, whereas before that's never necessarily been asked.
It's a topic, as you said earlier, that is one that's always brought up some very, very good points. But the sustainability of most football clubs relies on their fans and their engagement with the community. And what better way if you've got a service, the community comes without ruining the pitch. As Bakes said, his own club, Slough Town, has come on leaps and bounds since they've had that surface. Margate, again, they producing good football, albeit their results this year probably haven't been as good as what they'd like. And at Aveley Football Club, it's a magnificent stadium, fantastic surface to play football on. And as a result of that, they're doing well financially. I think they're better off than they were certainly at their old ground. I think that the Football League need to get up with the times. I mean, we played World Cup qualifiers on this surface, so why not in the Football League?
It's a really interesting point, and if anyone tuning in wants to chip in as we enter the final stages of this evening's show, what do you think about the 3DG debate? Maybe beforehand you were a bit sceptical, maybe you thought the EFL were right, but now there's going to be a larger glaze on financial sustainability for football clubs. Is it time to reopen that debate and maybe consider applying a bit more pressure on the powers that be to show more flexibility to enable clubs not only to be pioneers within their community, but to be sustainable football clubs for years to come? And one final thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was Players United, one of the more positive stories of the week, the Premier League footballers who have arguably been hidden behind a bit of a shield from the PFA, have come together to produce a scheme to support the NHS. A bit of good news, and again, footballers maybe leading by example during a couple of weeks where Premier League footballers in particular have come under some criticism, and perhaps not fair criticism. Jim, what's your take on that?
Yeah, certainly unfair criticism on my part. The government, an MP obviously mentioned that football clubs should be giving more players, Premier League players should be giving some money in. Unknown to him at the time, they were already making plans to raise money and contribute to the NHS fund. And I just think that that the footballers get a rough deal, because they actually do this throughout the season, throughout the year. They give millions of pounds to numerous charities. They don't sing and dance about it, and as is their right. And perhaps people like bankers, film stars, the rich and famous, and big corporate companies may need to start looking at themselves as well, and donate accordingly as well.
Neil, do you think that scrutiny comes because football, it's our nation's sport, isn't it, really? For lots of us at the moment, it really is a big chunk of our life that we're missing. And because people feel so passionately about football, it's something they care about so much, it's almost held on a bit of a pedestal and in such high regard that people almost want it from a moral point of view to be leading by example. And unfortunately, what we have seen ultimately is the Premier League hasn't necessarily been that example. The PFA are a union-led organisation, so they're wanting to protect their players' wages, and ultimately the footballers themselves have been left in a bit of an isolated space, but they've come back fighting, and it really is a fantastic initiative.
Yeah, it is. I thought they were left to hang out to dry, to be honest. As Jim said, why just the footballers? Why not the film stars? Why not etc. And as Jim said, so many of them have individual foundations that they run and run charity things. And, you've also got to remember that they pay 45% of their money to in taxes, which pays for helps pay for the NHS. Let's be honest, one player like Harry Kane is contributing more than probably 100 of us do in a year. So I didn't like how they were sort of targeted. I think you're always going to get certain players, and in any walk of life, that don't want to contribute, that are selfish and want to do their own things. But there's plenty that do. I think, unfortunately, football has that thing where there's so many people that don't understand or don't even like football. At a certain level, they don't actually even like football, so they see these players getting all these hundreds of thousands a week, and they're easy targets. So for me, I thought it was wrong of the government to come out, and fair play to the players. They've done what they need to do, probably, but I think that the way they've done it is probably the best way of doing it.
And one viewer has got in touch with us in agreement and makes the point that the problem was that clubs, Spurs, Newcastle, Liverpool, though they quite rightly, in my opinion, rescinded their initial statement, all furloughed their non-playing staff. So I think potentially it was that divide, led by the clubs themselves, obviously not the players in those positions, put a bit of an unfair focus on the footballers themselves. And I, for one, was really pleased that Liverpool changed their minds. I think that was definitely the right thing to do. And Jim, do you think there should be more pressure on the likes of Spurs when they're generating such profits to look after their own without necessarily leaning on the government scheme, which is potentially not there to support profit multi-million-pound businesses?
I think you reap what you sow, and I think only time will tell what damage this is going to display in the future in relation to Tottenham Hotspur. But you know, they're a business, and they've made a decision. It's the wrong decision in my view, and fair play to the likes of Liverpool and others that have reneged on their original decision. It was the right one for them to actually go back on it, and yeah, I think that the chairman of Tottenham may need to have a good long look at himself in the mirror, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that agree with that as well. And as we begin to wrap up the show, we've had a couple more of you get in contact about the 3G debate. Do you know what? I thought this one would provoke a few comments. There's nothing that gets a non-league audience sparked into life more than the 3G debate. I myself am with you, Neil. I think I've seen firsthand at Margate the impact it's had. But one viewer's got in touch to say, I have to disagree. You just can't allow 3G in the professional game. The game should be played on grass. And the amount of injuries down to 3G, it will never be let in because of that alone.
So I'll come back on that. I get. You know, I was one of those people. When we first found out we were going 3G instead of grass at the new stadium, I was a little bit disappointed. You know, I was always against the artificial surface. It's not like Luton and QPR of old days. They are top pitches. And the whole injury argument, for me, you know, so we've been there 3.5 years, 4 years almost. I think we've had probably 50% less injuries since we've been there than we had in the previous years when we were on grass. So for me, that isn't an argument. We've got somebody like Sam Togwell, who's 35 now, Manny Williams, who's 39. Sam's been a pro all his life. Thought, I'm not sure about this 3G. He's coming off the back of a season with Eastleigh, where I think he played about 14 games due to injuries, and he's now had 2 seasons where he's played over 45 games. So I'm not having that as an argument, and I will swear by 3G. I think it's a great surface, and I think that once clubs embrace, you know, it would get accepted. I know lots of those pro clubs, they train on 3G pitches anyway. You know, when the pitches are frozen and stuff like that, they don't seem to have any problems then.
That's really interesting. And Danny agrees with you. He's got in touch. His club, Newport County, have a horrendous pitch. So I guess, again, there is an argument in terms of raising standards. And I've been to God knows how many different clubs now, not necessarily just in non-league, but in the Football League as well, and been quite shocked, really, by the standards of the grass pitches. Unfortunately, not all of them are able to be maintained in a way that does tick that box in terms of safety. So it's interesting. It's another one that divides opinion. And we've just had a few more comments come through that I want to read out before we wrap up today. Bexley United have got in touch saying, within the professional game, money should be filtered down the pyramid from the clubs and not the players. It might be an idea for the PFA chairman to take a wage cut also. And I guess with times like this, it really does, like I say, add a layer of scrutiny to the way that football operates, the massive salaries that are associated with the game. And the idea of leadership in football is an important one, isn't it, Jim? Because, I mean, for the likes of yourself and Neil over the last couple of weeks, you've probably had to show leadership in a completely different way, engaging and talking and supporting your players and talking them through all of this. But that money simply hasn't filtered down, and the non-league game has been left to fend for itself. And people have long memories in football. Do you think that this could maybe damage and further divide the link between the non-league and pro game? Or do you think once the dust has settled, clubs will do their own thing. Because again, you look at maybe Kent's a poor example because we only have one football league club, but in the likes of Manchester and particularly areas up north where there's a massive population of Premier League clubs, do you think that they will, when the time is right, lend a bit more support, or am I just being a little bit optimistic?
I think you're being very optimistic. I think,
as always.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I think there's always been that divide between the professional game and non-league football, and from both ways. If I'm honest, I think that the people that run the Football Association, as Bakes mentioned earlier, I think it needs a bit of a shake-up. I think it needs new minds, people with innovative ideas that understand grassroots football all the way up, and they can offer some good ideas, which I think then would be understood from the fans of non-league and obviously and certainly the non-league pyramid. I think that to think that when this is all over, and I hope everyone who's listening to this and everyone I know connected to it gets through this safely. I think that there will be a lot of people that will this will leave a sour taste in their mouth with the decisions that are being made.
Well, Neil and I were making the point last week that well, I'm not a Spurs supporter, Neil. I'm not sure who you follow, but not Spurs.
Not Spurs. West Ham.
West Ham. Oh, okay. But if I was a Spurs supporter, I really would. Again, maybe I'm being naive here, but I'd really consider if I had a season ticket whether I'd want to go and support that football club again. So maybe there might be an opportunity from sort of a marketing point of view. Obviously, we see almost tokenistic non-league day, which I love. I love non-league day. It's great, but it's, it happens twice a season at max. Maybe there will be a bit of a resurgence from the leagues to say, come and support your non-league club, because every penny that goes through the turnstile, Neil, as you'll know too well, you spoke to us last week about how well run Slough Town is. It makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Whereas if you go to your Premier League club, it's like a drop in the ocean.
Well, I think that's right, and the fact that they've been obviously talking about finishing the season behind closed doors because it doesn't really affect them that much. The actual fans through the gate. I would love to say that will happen. That Tottenham fans will be sitting at home, screwing with Daniel Levy, saying, "Well, that's it. I'm not going to go and watch them again." Unfortunately, the realisation is once this finishes and they're back into a Premier League game and they've got Arsenal at home, people forget, and that's unfortunately the problem. But yeah, it is like non-league. Supporters are recognised. They are valued, whereas they're probably less so at the higher you go. But that's because of all the TV money, and that's probably another debate.
And that's the thing that is so unique about non-league football, is that you can go along each week, follow your football club, and the management and the players, they're not remote. You can go into the bar afterwards, have a chat, build relationships, build rapport, and in turn, when those players move on, go up the pyramid, come back down from the pyramid, or with the FA Cup teams playing and all the different trophies and stuff, you build a real rapport and a really, really special network in non-league, don't you, Jim? And I suppose if anyone's watching that's maybe just tuned in to us off the back of all that we've been talking about, that hasn't gone to watch a non-league game, once we are back up and running, it really is special and unique, and it's very unfortunate that it's not cherished more by people higher up in these governing bodies and on these panels making and casting their votes.
Yeah, I mean, with the pro game, the players are almost held on a pedestal, aren't they? And it's hard for them to engage with the fans. I'm sure they would love to do so more often in a bar afterwards. I'm not saying all of them would do, but I'm sure some would like that opportunity to do that. Non-league football is unique. It's fantastic. You go into the bar afterwards and you mix with both sets of fans, and you can have a beer with them, have a chat with them, have a discussion with some of them, and that's the beauty of it. That's why I've been doing it for so long, and why Bakes has also been doing it for such a long time.
Yeah, it really is. And even just having the opportunity to spend an hour with you guys, despite the technological failure earlier, sorry about that. It's been really eye-opening again, and fantastic to listen to your opinions. I'm sure this time next week there'll be even more to talk about, because it really does feel like each day going on Twitter or social media, there's like a new curveball that's been thrown, particularly, I must say, for the non-league game. But fingers crossed clubs can continue to survive and gain their support. We've had a couple of comments coming in the last couple of minutes raising some really good points about the way the German leagues, the Liga, have acted, and I won't go into that this evening because I'm sure we can save it for next week's show. So guys, thank you very much for joining me on Bank Holiday and your Good Friday. I hope you have a really good weekend, minus football once again, but the sun will be out, so I hope you have a good one, and thank you for joining me.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
All right, take care, guys.
See you later.
See you later. And
Perfect.
that is just about all we have time for Back Over the Net's Extra Time Show. Thank you so much to everyone that has joined us, to all of those of you that have shared your comments, connected with us on Twitter. Do not forget to subscribe to Back of the Net on YouTube. You will get the alerts whenever we go live. And as I said at the start of the show, Ben has got a trick up his sleeve for Easter Sunday at 8 p.m. So make sure you tune in then. Back on Net will be bringing you more content next week and keeping you entertained during these really tough and difficult times. And it goes without saying, we hope you all keep safe and well over the weekend. Stay indoors, keep safe, and we will see you again next week. Take care.